Good morning here in Jerusalem, Israel. Good afternoon, good evening, good day, good night, wherever you are. My name is Karen A, and this is the Afro-Euro Reco12 podcast. We are a family, a group of people recovering from all addictions, all afflictions, finding solace, experience, strength, and hope through working the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous as outlined in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. We are a fellowship of people who work this program, and hopefully, if you're not yet, you will be sponsoring others and getting that joy and sunlight of the spirit. We invite you to Reco12.com to listen to myriad podcasts, whether you're a debtor, a gambler, anorexic, bulimic, sex addict, workaholic, and you could add any to that list, codependent, Al-Anon. We actually use the instructions in our big book for all those maladies. You could hopefully find a speaker that you relate to and connect to, and you might even be able to find a sponsor or a fellow that you want to stay in touch with to maintain your own recovery. If you have recovery through the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, whatever your fellowship, I want to hear from you. Reco12 wants to hear from you. I'll put my number in the chat. I'm Karen A, and you can reach out to me or Justin or through the website and hit us up. Let us know that you're ready and available to speak in one of our meetings at one of our time zones. We and the recovery world want to hear your experience, strength, and hope. If you would like to contribute a seventh tradition, that really helps out with the Zoom and technical costs of this program, you could do so by going to Reco12.com/support. And we accept PayPal and Venmo. Without further ado, it is my honor and privilege to invite Joseph O, my colleague and Jerusalem co-inhabitant and fellow, to speak to you. He'll introduce his topic, tell you a bit of his story, and share a lot of the great recovery that he's got through the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous and, of course, working with others day in and day out. Joseph, welcome. You will have about 25 minutes. I'm actually not super strict. You could even take up to 30 to share. Party people on the line, I'm going to ask you to write your questions in the chat. I'll come up with a few myself. Write your questions in the chat. Joseph's got a lot of wisdom, a lot of mad Big Book knowledge, and I encourage you to ask him your questions. And reach out to him. Joseph, I'm also going to ask you to put your number in the chat. So if people want to follow up with you privately, they could do so. Welcome, Joseph, and good morning. Thanks for joining.
You're very welcome. Thank you, Karen. My name is Joseph O. I'm a recovered alcoholic. I'll put my number in the chat after this. But if anybody's interested, you can also, Karen has my number. If you have her number, then effectively you have mine. All right. As I said, my name is Joseph O. I'm a recovered alcoholic. And so what I chose, thank you, Karen. So what I chose to speak about this morning is the importance of what I call step zero, or what's known in the rooms as step zero, but somebody had actually asked, what is it? So it's not that everybody knows it, but I'll just walk you through. If you found yourself in this room, right, either you're bored or looking for something to do, or you had a problem you couldn't solve, right? All of us have to raise our hand and say, we had a problem we couldn't solve, whether it's, in the physical addiction, drinking, drugs, one of the process addictions, gambling, relationships, things of that nature. We were in a mousetrap we couldn't spring, okay? And that's why we came to the rooms. But I like to go through this as far as let's take a theoretical. Let's say I was standing out front of a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, okay? And a guy named Doug comes up, right? And I say, hey, Doug, why are you here? He says, I have a drinking problem. I said, oh, okay, when's the last drink? He said, I haven't drank in 30 days. Great, you don't have a drinking problem, Doug. He doesn't, because he didn't drink for 30 days, right? What he has is a thinking problem that's going to take him back to drinking, right? Now, most people don't know that. They come trying to solve a drinking problem, right? They're already in the wrong place. Why? Because if you read the steps, it never says you're going to stop drinking. I mean, go read them if you haven't yet. It doesn't say you're going to stop drinking, right? What it does say is having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, right? We tried to carry this message. right? So what we're looking for is a spiritual experience. A spiritual experience puts us in a realm of being able to accept reality as it is, which will eventually stop our drinking. Does that make sense? Or our over shopping, or our womanizing, or our overspending, whatever it is. If we're out of touch with reality, we're going to make moves that are going to put us in a situation more likely to be harmed, right? And no animal on the planet other than human beings do that, right? Any animal that senses danger runs away from it, right? We're the kind of people that, are driving on the highway and see a sign that says dangerous curves ahead and we step on the gas, right? And we put ourselves in situations like, oh yeah, maybe this will work out, right? If I buy this expensive thing on the 10th of the month, I'm sure I'll have the money by the 30th to cover it on the credit card bill, right? Well, if you asked anyone who's not you, even a 5-year-old, they're going to say that's probably not going to work out the way you think, right? So why do we continually do that? Because we continually go back to trusting our thinking, okay? And that's one of the tenets of Alcoholics Anonymous, is when I go into what exactly step 0 is, it's the basic realization that my thinking will sometimes lie to me, right? It doesn't tell me the true story. It casts things in a more favorable light. It puts me in a light that, I'm never wrong, that other people are out to get me, right? It tells me stories. One of my sponsors, when I was doing my 5th step, if you're familiar with the steps, 5th step is where you read your 4th step and you get insight. And I was telling him about something my sister did to me. And then I said, you know why she did this? She did this because of X, Y, and Z, something that happened. He said, how do you know that? I said, I don't know. I just know. He said, Joseph, your brain is telling you lies. You don't know what's going on in your sister's head. He said, you spend 90% of your day responding to a world that does not exist, right? Coming to terms with that I respond to a world that doesn't exist. I think somebody likes me who doesn't. I think somebody that hates me that loves me, right? It tells me life. So step 0 is really coming to terms with the fact that I can't trust my thinking. Not in all things, but generally in areas of romance and finance. But I have to run it past other people. It points to that I have to have other people involved in my life. A lot of people come to Alcoholics Anonymous, right? They're looking for information, right? That is not what Alcoholics Anonymous is about. That is a total wrong way of looking at it. We didn't come here to gain something new. We came to shed something old, right? And that's all through the book. If you read the book, you'll realize it. We came here to shed our character defects, right? We came here to shed our old way of thinking. Some of us, you guys have heard, chapter 5 like 1,000 times. Some of us tried to hold on to our old ideas, and the result was nil, right? So you're all sitting there, right? Me too. I'm trying to hold on to my old ideas about what wealth is, about what love is, about what my position in the world is, about how people should be treating me. I'm trying to hold on to my old ideas, and the result is nil. What does it have to do with drinking? Excellent question. Because if I hold on to my old ideas and my old viewpoints, I will grow to what the doctor's opinion says is being restless, irritable, discontented. That's the default state to the alcoholic, okay? Left untreated, an alcoholic wakes up in a state of being restless, irritable, discontented. Not every single day. It's our default position. There are 2 ways to treat restless, irritable, discontentedness, to treat alcoholism, right? One is drinking, okay? We tried that, and I assume it didn't work out or you wouldn't be here. The other is a spiritual experience. That's really it. Staying in the middle, right, and not doing anything about it is going to put you in a state where generally you're going to be restless, irritable, discontented. You're going to be judgmental on people. You're going to get into difficulties. You're going to be, at our best moments, we're producers of confusion rather than harmony, right? That's a quote from the book, right? Before I get into exactly what I mean by step 0, I'm just going to, some of the manifestations of what our problem is, right? So if you know the story about the actor, okay, by the way, fun fact, from page 58 to page 64, the big book only mentions alcohol twice, okay? It says alcohol is cunning, baffling, and powerful, and it says we're powerless over alcohol, right? Now, you would think a book that's going to tell me how to stop drinking is really going to mention alcohol, how to stay away from alcohol, how to avoid it, how to this, that, whatever. It doesn't. What Alcoholics Anonymous proposes to do is to keep us out of what I call prelapse, right? We have no mental defense against the first drink. It says it at least 3 times in the big book that I found. I have no mental defense. If a drink is in front of me at the right place at the right time in the right situation on the day, that my dog died and it's raining, right? Like a country song. You know what happens when you play a country song backwards? Your dog comes back to life. The girl falls in love with you, right? You get your job back, right? But all the things that go wrong, if there's a drink in front of me, and not even necessarily a drink, let's say, I'm able to solve it with spending. I'm able to solve it with womanizing. I'm able to solve it with shopping or with being a workaholic, right? If a drink is in front of me on one of those days, I don't have a mental defense against it. I don't have the ability to will against it. So what Alcoholics Anonymous proposes to do is to create a situation which keeps us out of prelapse mode, right? I don't know if you guys know the whole Jim story, right? Which is on page 35. Jim, right? The guy who put whiskey in milk, right? The guy was continuing to prelapse. What was he doing working at a business he used to own, right? Any 10th grader could tell you, look, you're going to be resentful every day, right? If Jim had a sponsor, okay, if I was his sponsor, right, I would have said, stay out of that situation, right? We know that he drinks the next day, but if you're working for a business that you used to own, or one of my sponsees actually, he was getting divorced, okay, but the house didn't sell yet. So he's telling me, oh, I'm divorcing my wife. It's almost final. We're going to live in the same house, okay, until it sells and everything will be okay. And I was like, no, you're not. That's retarded, right? Eventually you're going to get into a fight. You're either going to get a shotgun or a bottle of vodka, but something not good is going to happen. He couldn't see it because his brain was telling him through logic, right, flawed logic, that this is going to work out. Right? Or any of you that have children, okay, let's say adult children, right? You're giving them advice, okay? And they're telling you to get lost, stay out of my business, and you're offended, right? Why do you keep doing it, right? Because our brain doesn't have a mental defense against that, okay? But I'm just going to give you briefly some of the things that the big book says about this, and then I'll take you to step 0, what I perceive to be, and then we can start our recovery. So on page 60, okay, the first requirement is that we be convinced that any life run on self-will can hardly be a success. You could add this to what I call step 0, because it says the first requirement is that we be convinced any life run on self-will can hardly be a success. Are you convinced of that? Are you convinced of that as much as you are convinced you're right-handed? Now I see Cheryl's nodding over there, but I'll guarantee, like within 4 hours after this, you're going to make a move based on self-will, right? That is not going to work out, right? So we have to say to ourselves, how many times do I have to get beaten up? Me personally, right? If I walk down an alley, if I, there's different ways to get around in Jerusalem. If I walk down an alley here because it's a shortcut and I get the crap beat out of me, right, by a gang, right? That's bad luck. The next time I do it, that's a mental problem, okay? Thinking it's going to work out this time, thinking things are going to be different. I'm going to open my mouth at the Thanksgiving table and say, I like Trump, right? Meanwhile, my family's entirely Democrat, and I think the thing is going to work out. It's not going to work out, right? I need to figure out a way to stop making those moves because it's going to cause me to become restless, irritable, discontented, and that leads to drinking, okay? So this is part of step 0. The first requirement is that we be convinced that any life, and it's talking about all of humanity. It's not saying alcoholics. People misunderstand that the big book was written specifically for alcoholics. It was written specifically for alcoholics, but when it talks about humanity in general, everybody's disturbed by this. Everybody's, the guy who loves his family winds up sleeping with his secretary, right? He put himself in a situation where risk is, that he couldn't see the, the disaster that was coming ahead. It's not alcohol, but it's the same kind of thing. On that basis, right, living in self-will, we are almost always in collision with something or somebody, even though our motives are good. This is why when you tell people, but I meant well, it doesn't matter, right? The collision that we cause with other people, right, is based on the fact that our alcoholism is manifesting as self-will. We get into people's business, right? You work in business and you go and you give your coworker advice, right, that they didn't ask for, right? Why? Why are we doing that? Isn't that playing God? One page later, it's going to say, that first of all, we had to quit playing God. It didn't work, right? We give them advice. We tell people, what they should be doing. You give advice to people in the supermarket. Hey, you should talk to your kid nicer. Who asked you? Did God himself appoint you to get involved in that? I know what you're thinking because I'm also alcoholic. But Joseph, aren't there times when we should get involved? Yes, good question. If it's somebody subordinate to you or a child, somebody in your protection and care, yes, then it behooves you to get involved. But humanity in general, no, we don't need to go around giving our opinion on things, right? Our brains were given to us to do, right? Not to think and to comment, despite what you think. Nikki, despite what your brain told you this morning, it wasn't to go out and give people advice, right? Your brain is telling you because the regime in charge, doesn't want to get overthrown. Nowhere, right? So the one that's giving us the information, right? This is why we have a problem. We can't stop getting into the crack den because our brain is the one that took us there, right? It's not like you drive there and you're like all of a sudden, you wake up, right? Our brain has agendas. Okay, so this is the thing that needs to be addressed by step 0. On that basis, we are almost always in collision with something or somebody, even though our motives are good. Even though our motives are good, that's why we can't rely on our motives, right? When I get into somebody else's business, I do have good motives. Hey, you know what? It's not a good idea to get involved with your ex-girlfriend again, right? Hey, you know what? If you're on a diet, you really shouldn't be going to the all-you-can-eat, fish fry or whatever it is. Unless they ask me, right? If they ask me, that's God's way of saying, hey, Joseph, I want you involved, right? If somebody asks my opinion on something, somebody asks me for information or whatever, they want me to be involved. But if I'm just walking around giving advice, right, my brain is taking charge. Most people try to live by self-propulsion. Each person is like an actor who wants to run the whole show, right? So the guy's paid to act. Me, Joseph O, I'm paid to act, to do God's will. It's going to say on page 63. My job is to stay close to him, to God, and to work, to do his work well. That's it. Anything outside of that is me getting back into self-will. Me going into a chat and saying like, oh, you know what you're writing is factually incorrect. No one asked me. I don't, it's not my position to go in to educate these people. Anyone, right? But when I do, the problem is I'm setting myself up to be harmed or bent out of shape or my feelings hurt, right? And when I'm doing that, I'm pushing myself more towards a drink. We all know the joke, right? Resentment is drinking poison, hoping the other guy dies, right? Now, yeah, haha, it's funny. People die over this, right? They hold on to resentments against family members. They hold on to resentments against children, right? I gave them money and they don't listen to me and this and that, right? Well, that was a setup. If you gave them money with an agenda, then you were the idiot, right? Okay, each person is like an actor, wants to run the whole show, is forever trying to arrange the lights, the ballet, the scenery, the rest of the plays in his own way, right? So take a look at that. We're forever, that's a long time, forever trying to arrange the world to meet my internal view of things, right? What Alcoholics Anonymous says, I have to jettison my internal view of things, right? And allow my insides to accept reality. Does that make sense? If I want to go to the beach today, okay, it's a nice day, whatever, I could probably hit the beach before Shabbat, right? But it's raining, okay, and I say it shouldn't be raining, that's me playing God, right? Why can't I bring myself into acceptance that God said it's going to rain, right? It's good for the flowers and this and that. Accept it, not be bent out of shape. Instead, I have thoughts, opinions, and attitudes which are going to do me a disservice about what reality is. Even if you're at a meeting, okay, you're at a meeting. And Jenny, okay, I'm just going to give some fictitious name. Jenny gets up and she's, there's a 3-minute limit on sharing. And here she is in the 4th, 5th, 6th minute. And I'm like, what is going on? Why aren't people getting involved and shutting this down? What's Jenny thinking, right? Why do I have that sort of opinion about things? Because I'm not in acceptance of reality. Why can't I say, where would Jenny be if it didn't have a meeting, right? Where would I be if we didn't have a meeting? And what's the big deal anyway? So it's an extra 2 minutes. They actually discovered three interesting things about alcoholics in general. One is that we have poor impulse control, right? Anyone identify there, right? That all the candy and stuff that's by the cashier, that's for us, by the way, right? Because as you're getting, you got to get a couple extra things, right? Whatever, and a pack of batteries, right? How many packs of batteries do you got, in your closet, right? That you haven't used, right? You got to get an extra pack of batteries. Poor impulse control, right? That we have a heightened emotional state, that either our highs are higher and our lows are lower, If they do this, they ask people with questionnaires, how do you feel about going to a wedding, right? We would say like it's a 9, right? An average person would say it's like a 5, right? Whatever, right? And like if you get a flat tire, right? Like how bad is that, right? An average person would say it's like a 4 or something like that. We would say it's a 1, right? Everything went down. There's a joke, the difference between an alcoholic and a normie. Normie's driving to work, gets a flat tire, calls AAA, right? Alcoholic, is driving to work, gets a flat tire, and calls suicide hotline. You don't understand. If I don't get to work on time, then I'm never going to get married. And my mom's going to be right about everything, right? Like we extrapolate out perceptions. That's why we have to have some kind of defense system between me and a drink. If I don't, otherwise I'm going to take that drink. What I propose and what Alcoholics Anonymous comes to propose is things like a God squad, right? Surrounding yourself with 5 people that you, not cheerleaders, people misunderstand this, not people that I can go and complain to. 5 people that surround me that can say, hey, Joseph, you know what? Your text messages have been really dark lately. Hey, Joseph, I haven't heard from you in a month. Hey, Joseph, you're not showing up at your home group, whatever it is. Why? Because my brain will tell me everything's okay, and it's not. Every human being on the planet has to come to realize that their thinking isn't necessarily straight. I'm going to give you a proof in your own life, and I know some of you, but I don't know most of you. I'm going to give you in your proof that you can't trust your thinking. 5 years ago, did you make a decision that you now, looking back on, regret? Right? So your brain made a decision over there, right? That set you up to be worse off. And yet today, you're going to trust that same brain, right? So that 5 years from now, I'm going to ask you the same question, right? On April 25th in 2025, did you make any decisions that you later, well, yeah, I opened my mouth and I told my kid, that he should be, losing weight or whatever. Okay. It's okay, though. Every human being has to acknowledge it. So before we make moves, run it past your sponsor, run it past your God squad. Say, hey, you know what? Here's what I'm considering of doing. Put that email that you're going to send out to give everybody a blast in draft for a day. This is what I advise my sponsees, right? They're like, you don't understand what's going on at the office, right? That was the third thing that they discovered, right? Poor impulse control, heightened sense of emotional state. Third is we have an overdeveloped sense of right and wrong. Almost every alcoholic. We're the one that's screaming, but you don't understand. It's not the money, it's the principle, right? But you're talking about $5, whatever it is, right? I give this example, that I go out to get food from my wife and mother-in-law and kids, right? And my mother-in-law says, hey, you know what? I want to pay for this. Okay, here's the receipt. It says $40. She gives me 30. Okay, and she says, thank you. Now I'm thinking, where's the other $10? Right? Come on. We both see it, right? Now, if a sane person were to magically come in there, they would say, Joseph, you're about to yell at your wife's mother, right? If you don't want things to get ugly, just shut up. Who cares? $10. You know what I'm saying? We lack the perspective. We have an overdeveloped sense of right and wrong, right? We're the ones that we get involved in road rage, or we have to go find the person who took our spot in the parking lot. Right? We have to go locate that person in Target and say, do you know you parked in the spot I was about to take? Right? Setting yourself up for all kinds of things besides our emotional nature goes down. Okay, so I'm going to spend a couple more minutes on this, and then I'm going to get into what actually step 0 is. All right, so this guy, he wants all the rest of the players to act in his own way. So this is a delusion. What I'm about to say is not true. If the big book were to have what I call delusion font, like a reverse italics or something like that, I really think it should, because this comes off as being true, but it's not. It's a delusion in his head. If my arrangements would only stay put, if only people would do as I wish, this show would be great, right? Now that is not true, right? If everybody did like I think, I personally think the world would be great. That's not true. I can't even manage my own life, let alone the global perspective of what's going on. But alcoholics, we have opinions about everything. I have opinions about things that I haven't even heard about yet. You go up to an alcoholic and you say, what do you think about population control in China? They'll give you a whole discourse on what they think. They have no idea what's going on there, right? Personally, I think that the members of Knesset are going to pull up in the Suburbans, right, and come and ask me, hey, Joseph, what do you think we should be doing? Right? Well, I'm glad you asked. I've been thinking about this for a while. right? And I'm going to give him advice. Why can't I just keep my mind to my own business? How to execute God's plan as written on page 63. Stay close to him, perform his work well. Ask yourself that question before you act. Before I'm about to open up my mouth, is this staying close to God and performing his work well, or is it selfishness and self-centeredness, right? Am I getting involved so I can hear myself, right? If somebody's talking to me and telling me a problem, and I'm thinking to myself, I know how to solve this problem, I have to ask myself first, did he ask me? Am I staying close to him, performing his work well? Or am I just spouting off so I'll look better to myself, right? And then I'll walk away thinking I did God's work, when what God's plan really was for me to just listen to the guy, right? Does that make sense? Being able to stay away from these things is what I perceive to be step 0, right? Okay, and I'll get to it in a second. Now, it's like an infomercial, right? First I have to tell you, how many times has this happened to you? And then I'm going to give you the 800 number where you can order the product, right? That's going to change your life. By the way, those commercials at 3 o'clock in the morning, they're for us also, right? They also know who other people are. What are you doing up at 3 o'clock in the morning? Because you can't sleep because your brain is right? So they know who's going to buy their product. All right, everybody, including himself, would be pleased. That is not true. Life would be wonderful. Also not true. In trying to make these arrangements, our actor may be sometimes quite virtuous. He may be kind, considerate, patient, generous. Okay, so when the big book makes lists, I underline every word. Why? Because Bill wasn't paid by the word, right? He really wasn't even a great writer at the beginning. He was educated in business and law, right? But the thing is, when I underline every word, it's because he wants you to be able to see these things in your day today, right? When I'm acting kind, am I doing it so that the girl will like me? Or am I doing that because I want to be kind? Because if I have an agenda, first it starts with roses, then it starts with chocolates. Then next thing you know, I got a mariachi band sent out to her location. I'm driving past her house, right? This is why restraining orders were invented, right? I'm trying to be kind, right? But the reality is I have a selfish agenda. Considerate, patient, generous. So I asked myself, am I acting this way for good reason or for selfish reasons? Even modest and self-sacrificing, on the other hand, it may be mean, egotistical, selfish, and dishonest. This is the bullying mentality, right? You know what's weird? Bullies never find out that they're bullies until like much later in life when they hit a wall they can't go again. You know why? Nobody told them that they were a bully. You know why? Because they're bullies. You don't go up to right. By the way, you're bullying people, right? Because they're going to smack you around. So just because nobody's telling you that you are screwing up or that you're offensive doesn't mean that you're not. Does that make sense? Because it may be that you're impervious to criticism. Step 0 takes us back. Here, you know what? Since I don't know how we are on time. Back when I was telling you that the guy Doug.
You could take another 10 minutes if you want.
Got questions about addiction, recovery, or just life in general? Let's noodle it out together. Grab your big book, a pen, a highlighter, and a notepad, and join Nikki M and me, Justin B, on Reco12 Noodle It Out with Nikki M. Each episode, we take real-life questions, ours, yours, and those from the recovery community, and dig deep into the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous to find real, practical solutions. So, if you're ready to do the work and apply the solution, tune in to Noodle It Out with Nikki M, streaming now on your favorite podcast platform.
Sure. Okay, great. Okay. Okay. Thank you. So this guy, Doug, okay, he comes to Alcoholics Anonymous. Doug, why are you here? Right, I have a drinking problem. Okay, when did you drink? 30 days. You don't have a drinking problem, you have a thinking problem. Okay. So I show him the steps, and I say, it doesn't even say you're going to stop drinking. What it does say is that you're going to have a spiritual experience. Why does that help? Because it tells me my problem all the way on page 62. The problem that's been haunting me since I was a child. Selfishness, self-centeredness, that we think is the root of our troubles, right? Now, the important thing here is you hear those words, and I assume everybody on this call is educated in English, and you say, I know what selfishness is, I know what self-centeredness is. Cast away those definitions. Selfishness is not pushing down an old lady so that you can get ahead of her on the bus, right? Selfishness is not necessarily diving in, if there's 8 slices of pizza at the business pizza party, and there's 9 people, any alcoholic is going to reason that somebody's getting hurt here, and it's not going to be me, right? Selfishness, it manifests sometimes as diving in and getting your slice of pizza, but you have to expand it out. Selfishness is when I interrupt somebody who's trying to tell me a story that's emotional to them, and I interrupt them to start offering them solutions. That's selfishness. Selfishness is when I get into my kids' business and I don't allow them to grow because, I want my agenda. I don't want to worry about them. So I have to tell them what to do. Selfishness is when I tell my wife, hey, you know what? You really should think about a diet, right? Because I'm not looking into their world. So selfishness, self-centeredness, that we think is the root of our troubles, driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, self-pity. Fear is twofold. I'm afraid I'm not going to get something I want, or I'm going to lose something I have. Self-delusion is when I believe the lies that my brain is telling me, right? Like at the end of the day, okay, fine. You could sit on your porch and you could watch the sun move across the sky, and your brain will tell you clearly, I am watching the sun setting. And it's a lie. The earth is turning. Now, you don't see it that way because our perspective is messed up, right? But the reality is that we can't trust our thinking. There's no shame to that. Step 0 is acknowledging I can't trust my thinking. I have to ask somebody else. And people say, like, well, I don't want to ask my sponsor everything. You don't. The way I deal with my sponsees, by the way, they're not allowed to call me with 6-minute voice notes, whatever. That's just out. I don't listen to that from my girlfriend, right? 6-minute message. Within 2 minutes, tell me the problem. Tell me your proposed solution. And then I'm going to come back to you and I'll tell you which one of those solutions violates your principles. Think about it. If you're going to call your sponsor and just say open-ended, I'm thinking about a divorce, right? It doesn't help anything. But if you say, here are my reasons, here's what I'm thinking, here's my action plan, right? Then your sponsor can bounce that and say it's not based on reality, it's selfish, it's delusional. See how you serve things up. And if you're sponsoring, right, have them serve it up to you. Okay, now, because I want to stay close to time and hear what you guys have to say, let's go to what I actually perceive as step 0, okay? Page 30, okay? This is the, trust me on this. I know, because we're all alcoholics, that you're going to want to argue with me and say, I didn't think it through. Trust me, I've been doing this for 29 years. I have thought it through. It works, okay? Also, try to think it through, right? If you don't understand it, my number will be in the chat. You can come and explain it to me. But this is the thing that's going to allow me to be teachable. It's okay. I'm just going to read it and then I'll tell you. Most of us have been unwilling to admit we were real alcoholics. So that needs to be understood, right? Unwilling, okay? I don't want to admit my situation. I don't admit that I'm sick. You can take yourself to the hospital or your child or something like that. You can get a diagnosis. They can tell you what your problem is. They can give you the prescription. You won't take the prescription until you realize you're sick. Same thing with a diabetic. A diabetic who doesn't want to admit that he's a diabetic, right? He's going to say, yes, I understand. Yes, he's going to go to a party where his wife didn't accompany him, and he's going to eat a chocolate cake because he's unwilling to admit he's diabetic. Same thing with us, right? You go to a foreign city, nobody knows I'm an alcoholic here, right? I'm just going to sit at the bar. I like the piano player, right? Nobody goes to a whorehouse to hear the piano player, right? If you put yourself in a bar, if you hang around the barbershop, you're going to get a haircut, right? Step 0 is saying, I'm not going to go to the barbershop anymore. No person likes to think he's bodily and mentally different from his fellows. Therefore, it is not surprising our drinking careers, underline that. If you have a drinking career, you are an alcoholic. Normies don't talk like that. They don't have drinking careers, right? Drinking careers have been characterized by countless vain attempts, right? You would think that even a child won't do something over and over again, not getting a successful result. Why do we keep doing it? Because our brain is pushing us into that area. To prove we could drink like other people. To prove we could drink like other people. Are you trying to prove stuff to other people? Are you trying to prove to your mother that you're a success? Are you trying to prove to your friends that you made the right decisions? That's an alcoholic mentality. You have to step away from that. My relationship is with God today. Really, I mean, I had to scale it back. Because even in my life, I went and got an MBA later in life or whatever. And I realized later on all that work and all that time was really so that I could prove to my parents, right, that I had succeeded, right? Even though long before, it really made no difference. The idea that somehow, someday he will control and enjoy his drinking, great obsession of every abnormal drinker, right? So the idea that somehow, someday I will control and enjoy my drinking, okay? That world does not exist. If I am in control, I'm not enjoying it. And if I'm enjoying it, I am for sure not in control. Anybody that's had, drinking experiences like that world is a fantasy. I can't control and enjoy my drinking. It manifests in other areas in our life. When you put the bottle down, it'll manifest in the area. I want to watch 6 episodes of The Crown tonight, right? But I also want to show up at work on time, okay? Those two realities don't exist in conjunction, okay? If you go to sleep at 4 o'clock in the morning, you're going to wake up tired, right? So why do we keep doing it? Because we believe we can somehow beat the game. The persistence of illusion is astonishing. Many pursue it into the gates of insanity or death. Okay, so this is the actual step 0. Take it into your life, trying to understand it. We learned that we had to fully, right, concede. And my first sponsor told me it's the adverbs that are going to make the difference in your recovery, right? Because you could read it without the fully, but we learned that we had to fully concede to our innermost selves that we were alcoholics. This is the first step in recovery. It is not step 1. The steps don't come until page 59. Right? This is the step that comes before. This is the step that says, you know what? I can't trust my thinking. So therefore, I'm going to try the steps. I'm going to call my sponsor before I send that email. I'm going to let somebody else examine this relationship that I'm thinking about, right? Is she in line with my, with my long-term goals, or is she away from my long-term goals? My brain is going to tell me, no, we'll keep this in-house, right? But how well has that worked out? I have to fully concede to my innermost self that these decisions that I'm about to make might be detrimental to my overall being and away from God. This is the first step in recovery. The delusion, it's a delusion, right? It's a false belief. The delusion that we are like other people, or presently maybe, has to be smashed. The word smashed implies that it takes action on our part, right? We have to go out of our way to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to run this past my sponsor. I was asked to do a book study to take over somebody's position. And I said, before I take over your position, I need to run it past my sponsor. And she said, why? It's a no-brainer. It's a slam dunk. You're taking over. I said, maybe I'm doing too much in the recovery world. Maybe I have ego problems, and being in charge of this book study is I don't know, right? So in order for it to be smashed, take your thinking, your plan, run it past somebody else. And we'll leave you with this, right? As far as a recovery model, have a home group, okay? Why? Because then you get to see how other people's recovery manifests over time, right? You know somebody for 2 years who wasn't doing any work and eventually goes out. You could say, I don't want to be that guy. Secondly, you've got somebody who can make sure that you're showing up and give you comments on your recovery. Second, right, get a service position, right? This will keep you going to that meeting, right, and be of service. So you're staying on page 63, stay closer and perform as work well. Third, get a God squad. Okay, I'm telling you what it means, right? People who can comment on your lifestyle. Doesn't have to be an alcoholic necessarily. Has to be somebody you're in contact with routinely. Approach them and say, I'm really trying to work on myself this year. Could you proactively tell me if I'm screwing up, right? Because you're going to relate to them a story. Hey, yeah, you know what? I went to my daughter-in-law and I told her, you know what? She really shouldn't be talking to the kids like this. And that person will say, who asked you? Right? It'll be able to check my thinking. Okay? Have a God squad. Also, have interaction with your sponsor. Somebody whose recovery that you like. And when you deal with them, serve up your potential problem, your potential action plans, give them maybe 2 or 3, and then you can find out what God's will is for you, right? But basically, step 0 boils down to BJ asked me in the morning, is coming to the realization. Every human being has to do this, by the way. This is why we're on this planet. Come to the realization that I can't always trust my thinking, and therefore I have to take protections against that, because ultimately it may manifest in moves which lead me to be restless, irritable, and discontented, and push me more towards a drink. Okay. Thank you very much, Karen, for the opportunity to speak. My name is Joseph O, and my number is 972-53-349-3590. And now I'll turn it back to Karen. I look forward to hearing what you guys have to say.
Hey, Hey, Spearheads, if you're looking to dive deeper into the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous with people who live the solution, then you won't want to miss Reco12 Big Book Roundtable. Join David G., Nikki M., and me, the moderator Justin B., 3 recovered addicts from multiple fellowships, as we break down the big book line by line. In each 30-minute episode, we share our experience, strength, and hope in a real, raw, and practical roundtable discussion. So, if you are ready to learn and apply what you learn, tune in to Reco12 Big Book Roundtable on your favorite podcast platform.
Amazing. So there's a question in the chat. Can I be heard? Can you hear,
I can hear you,
can you
Ken.
hear me? Great. Okay, so you could get the recording of the chat after the meeting. It goes up on reco12.com a couple days after. It won't be up there today. Anyone have any questions for Joseph? Please put them in the chat. Please put them in the chat. Think about your questions, about working the steps. He spoke a lot about getting a God squad, working with others. Step 0, understanding that you have a problem. Understanding you have a problem being the precursor, knowing that you shouldn't trust your thinking. We covered off on that. We covered up on the alcoholic brain and impulse control.
Actually, can I add something else
go
which
ahead.
might be unpopular so people can respond to this? For some reason, modern AA has gotten convinced, right? I see it in the chats all the time, right? I'm going to dispel a rumor. I came in 1996, so I'm going way back, right? When we say outreach calls, okay, it's not what you think. The chats have screwed this up. An outreach call is where I call Karen and I say, Karen, how are you doing? I'm reaching out to Karen.
Wow.
That'll make me feel better, right? That'll be putting me into service. Now, outreach calls have become, hey, Karen, can I complain to you for 20 minutes and then ignore the solution you give? Do you mind? Right? That is called getting advice. That is not what Alcoholics Anonymous is about. You have to jettison.
Or it can even be worse than that they want to do an outreach call with no feedback.
Yeah.
Right.
And
I would like to dump, and you shut your mouth.
Right, exactly. And I'll explain why it works, why what I propose works. When I call somebody else and I ask them how they're doing, right? I'm doing God's work. I feel better about it. I'm working with others, right? It gives me an opportunity to transmit the program if they ask, right? But making the kind of call that they're doing now is doubling down on the problem. Focusing on the problem makes it bigger, right? You know, it's called getting advice. It's not a way to address this. So part of step 0 is that you have to jettison logic. Yes, it makes sense. I have to get some advice on this stuff, right? But how bad of a thinking is this? When you put it into the chat, when you write, I have this problem, or here's what I'm thinking, you're going to get 7 people giving it back. What brain are you going to use to choose between those solutions? The broken one that got you here, right? So my point about step 0 is saying, you know what? Find a particular person whose recovery you respect, send problems to them, and when you're feeling restless, irritable, discontented, reach out to another person and ask them how they're doing.
Well, this is a great point, which is why I reached out to Joseph to be on this call, why Joseph's always really ready and able and willing to do book studies, is that reaching out to someone is working with others. So you may not have found a sponsee, I personally am available to sponsor now. I don't have a sponsee, but I love what you just said, an outreach call. And I actually do that when I'm feeling blue, when I'm on the way to work, when I'm just like, oh, what I do today, can't be all work and laundry and there's got to be more. I'm like, oh, I should call my fellows, see how they're doing. Oh, I should call that person that, their ex is driving them crazy with the divorce agreement. Give them some help. Oh, my coworker, like her boss just told her off, I can go over and just be a friend. There's always some service to do. And if you're an addict like me, like other people on this line, I don't know why. I really don't. I'm a religious person. I'm an intellectual. I study philosophy, but something is magical about this, that when I reach out to my coworker and empathize and get into her world and do service,
it works when nothing else does. And our big book tells us that 2/3 of the people who recovered were those who continued to work with others.
Right.
And Joseph, maybe you'll talk about that. Why is that, the magic recipe?
Sure. All right, I'll continue to talk, and if anybody does have a question, they can pause me, tell Karen that you could just open up and say, Joseph, shut up if you want. But okay, I'm gonna go to page 153 to answer Karen's question, but to give a larger overall. Bill Wilson, okay, he worked with people in New York. None of them got sober. This is a known fact. He was heavy-handed in the religious message. He was too much about telling them what they need to do, right? You need to get sober, this and that. He didn't understand how it worked yet, okay? But he goes to Akron. The reason why it's important to know that he went to Akron is because he went to a place that didn't know that he was an alcoholic. No one there had seen him drink. No one there saw him had recovery. He had none of the pressures, right, to keep him sober, right? Lois wasn't around. None of the people that, knew he used to drink were around or whatever. So he's in Akron. It's on page 153. Years ago in 1935, Bill Wilson went to Akron. From a business standpoint, his trip came off badly. Had he been successful in his enterprise, he would have been set on his feet financially, which at the time seemed vitally important. But what he tried to do was he brought $100,000 to buy a company for a consortium back in New York. First of all, his sponsor was already drunk, right? Abby Thatcher was already drunk. I would have told him, look, if you're going to a foreign city, okay, bring somebody with you or check in with me every day or whatever it is. He didn't have any of these protections, but whatever. His venture wound up in a lawsuit, bogged down completely. The proceeding was shot through. Bitterly discouraged, he found himself in a strange place, discredited, almost broke. Okay, so he's got these feelings going on, right? And you can see that this is a situation we want to stay out of. Still physically weak, sober but a few months, he saw his predicament was dangerous. He wanted so much to talk with someone, but whom? Now, people read this and they say, I understand English. He wants to get advice. No, he does not. That is not how the story plays out. He wanted so much to talk with someone to help them, right? He could have gone to people in the hotel and asked for advice. He could have called up Evie Thatcher or whoever back in. He could have called Dr. Silkworth, right? He wanted so much to talk with someone to help them. One dismal afternoon, paced the hotel lobby, wondering how his bill's going to get paid. At one end of the room stood a glass-covered directory of local churches. Down the lobby, a door opened to an attractive bar, right? So already his brain is taking him towards the feeling of being, released. If you're thinking about taking a vacation, right, check that out with somebody else. Why? Because it could be that you're just trying to have a nice time with your children and family. And it could be that you're trying to escape your life, which is so hard, right, that you need to take a vacation, right? And the fact of the matter is, when you come back for the vacation, you're going to be in the same situation. So just ask yourself, why am I doing this? He could see the gay crowd inside, not that kind of gay, although I think it would be funny if it went that direction. Like, you go, Bill, right? In there, he would find companionship and release. Are you continually craving companionship and release? That's an alcoholic thinking. Why aren't you okay with yourself? Why do you always have to have the TV on when you come home at night, right? Why are you putting in, 10, 15 hours of Netflix a week, right? Because our life is sometimes so disturbing that we want to step out. It may manifest in one of those things, but it could be a drink. Unless he took some drinks, he might not have the courage to scrape an acquaintance, would have a lonely weekend, right? Now his brain is talking to him in a supposedly logical format. It says, if I don't take those drinks, right, I'm going to be lonely. Then his brain comes back. Of course, he couldn't drink. Why not sit hopefully at a table, bottle of ginger ale before him? I said it before, right? We don't go to the whorehouse to hear the piano player, right? If you go into a bar to get ginger ale, right, you better ask, why are you doing that, right? Because you're putting yourself closer to a drink. If you're going for somebody's birthday party from your office or something like that, great. But if you're going there to sit by yourself in a bar, right, and just have a Diet Coke or something, right, it may be problematic. Why are you listening to your brain telling you to do that? Well, I'm only going to go over to the neighbor's house to help fix her sink, right? Meanwhile, like that woman is not your wife. After all, had not been sober 6 months, perhaps he could handle, say, 3 drinks. Now his brain has revealed itself, right? It says, I'm going to get you to drink. Take 3 drinks, no more. Fear gripped him. He was on thin ice. Again, it was the old insidious insanity. Redefine what you mean by insanity. It doesn't mean that you run across the street naked with a buffalo head on you, right? it means that you put yourself in situations which are more risky and more likely to cause you pain. With a shiver, he turned down and walked down the lobby to the church directory. Music and gay chatter still floated. What about his responsibilities? His family and the men and women who would die because they did not know how to get well. Yes, those are their alcoholics. He thought about us in 2025. If he had gone and drank that day, we wouldn't be here today, right? He was of service to us by not taking that drink. There must be many in this town. He would phone a clergyman. His sanity returned, thank God. Selecting a church at random. So this is the second step. Came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity, right? God himself, came in and said, be sane, don't drink. Sanity returned, thank God. And he went and called Dr. Bob. Okay, now, I'll ask you a question, right? Did he go to a meeting? No. Did he call his sponsor? No. Did he pray? No. And all the things that are being recommended by modern AA did not happen in Bill's story. What did he do? He went and worked with another alcoholic, and that was the miracle. We started doing the other stuff more with more alacrity, right? But we forgot working with another alcoholic. I don't mean sponsoring them. I mean calling them up and asking how they're doing. Calling them up and saying, hey, would you like to read some of the big book today? Whatever it is, right? Working with another alcoholic is going to save the day. He was looking for somebody not to get advice from, but to give to. And in doing that, he was more like the God that he was worshiping, right? And it saved his life. Okay, I hope that covered it maybe a little too much, Karen. Oh,
Fabulous.
Okay.
Fabulous. Anyone else? Anyone have a question? You guys take advantage. Joseph O is a man with the book in his hand, and he pretty much knows it by heart.
No.
I'm envious of lots of it. Yeah.
Hey, Reco12 Spearheads. If our recovery resources have helped you, please consider a donation. Your financial support, as well as your word of mouth support, keeps Reco12 running and reaching the man who is still sick. Donate today at reco12.com/support or check the show notes for PayPal and Venmo links. Every contribution helps carry the message. Thanks for being a Reco12 Spearhead.
Yeah.
Come on, people.
Hello, morning.
There we go.
Or good evening, or wherever you are. I wasn't expecting to dive into this meeting. That's been brilliant to listen to you, Joseph.
There you go. Somebody's awake.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. It's been brilliant. Yeah. I've got a question, right? Maybe I don't want to ask it. I don't know what it is. Yeah, I've been in and out of AA, and I've sort of stopped going, but I've kept contact with people. I know my recovery's been poor, and I've been going to another fellowship. Although the people that I've kept in contact are serial relapses. I haven't had a relapse for 9 years. I was a serial relapse for myself. You think, is it unhealthy to be calling people that are constantly relapsing? Yeah, probably answering my own question, but I didn't
Okay.
expect it.
If I understand your question correctly, it depends on why you're there, right? You always have to ask your motive. If they're the kind of people that are complaining, life sucks, right? My wife is a jerk, this and that, nothing's the way I want. Then you're putting yourself in a situation that is bringing you down. If you're there to give to them, to listen to them, to say, hey, buddy, you know what? You've been relapsing your face off for the last year. Let's start reading the book together. I don't understand you. You don't understand. Let's find out what's going on in this, right? If you're there to give, then you're going to grow from that. Bill had to hang around with these serial relapsers. Nobody else was sober, But it helped him because he was continually transmitting, right? Not giving them advice, but like drawing them into the program, right? It's attraction rather than promotion. Are you an attractive representative of Alcoholics Anonymous? That's a question you have to ask yourself. If I'm into complaining and pointing out, what meetings suck today, nobody's getting it, you only got an 8% chance, rehabs are out for money, if that's what I'm bringing to the table, I am not transmitting recovery, even though I don't drink. You know what I'm saying? So just ask yourself, why are you present with those in that situation? To give and to attract, right? Or just to dump?
Thanks, Joseph. Appreciate that.
The
Thanks,
truth
everyone.
is, you personally might be the only big book they ever read. You know what I'm saying? If you're conducting yourself in a stable format, right? Your relationships are in order. The 5 areas we struggle with, right? Finance, legal, health, friends and family, romantic entanglements. If you're having success in these areas, right? Because God is helping you, not because you took a Tony Robbins course or because you graduated from Oxford or whatever, but because God is assisting you, they're going to come and ask you, hey, brother, how is it that you stayed out of jail the last 9 years? How is it that you're married or have a girlfriend or take care of your kids? They're going to ask you, right? And then you'll have something to say.
Okay, and if you have more questions, brother, you could keep asking them. If you have some more questions for Joseph O, please take advantage. Would anybody else like to ask a question? Maybe one of you are sponsoring and having issues with the on C, with the fellow, with the meeting that's not going the way you'd like it to be going. Who has a question for us here? Come on. Hit us up. Hit Joseph O up. You can take it.
Hey, I'll share something that just occurred to me, might be of use to somebody. So in general, there's a statement in the big book. It's on page 61. It's totally worth the value of the big book, whatever you paid for it, $8 or $30, whatever it is. It comes to say, it says, am I not a victim of the delusion that I can wrest satisfaction and happiness out of life if only I manage well? The reason why that statement is there is because that's what's been programmed into us ever since kindergarten. Now you say, no, Joseph, you're wrong. I'll tell you why I'm right, right? Because I understood if I study real hard and I get an A on the spelling test, then it goes on the refrigerator, and then my parents will love me more than my sister, okay? That's how I understood reality. And then it manifests, keep going. If I work out properly and I get the right car, I'll find the girl of my dreams, right? If I do these things, none of it was about trusting God, right? None of it was about trusting the process. None of it was about, trying to be in the right place at the right time, doing God's work so that he could manifest with me. So in my own personal life, okay, I was struggling in the area that I came to Israel and I figured like it's just going to be a matter of time. Going to wind up meeting a girl, going to get married, this and that, whatever. Wasn't happening, right? My brain was working that like if I do these right things, if I manage life well, right, that'll come to me. So what did I do? I went to page 70. It says to sum up about sex, which means relationships. To sum up about relationships, we earnestly pray for the right ideal, for guidance in each questionable situation, for sanity, for the strength to do the right thing. If relationships are very troublesome, we throw ourselves harder into helping others. I read that line. My sponsor brought it down to my line. He said, stop going around and trying making connections and trying to, find the girl. You work yourself out and the girl will find you. And I said, you are talking crazy. Okay. That's what I said. Okay. But what did I do? I wound up starting a book study and I wound up doing it 5 nights a week and whatever. So on December 31st, right, of last year, the girl I'm currently seeing came to my book study, right? And then we started talking, whatever. My point is that like what I had to step back from trusting my thinking that I had to go out and find something. And instead I started doing God's work and I read the book and applied it. And the thing I was looking for found me. Okay. Does that make sense? What does that have to do with drinking? That has a lot to do with drinking because unless I get my relationships in order and my finances in order and whatever it is, right, I'm going to be more likely to drink. In your situation, it might be something about getting a job, right? So you're saying I have to go and send out my resume to 100 things or whatever. Well, you have to have a resume. Yeah, but throw yourself harder into working with others. Let's say your health isn't well. Oh, I have to go to 1 million doctors and I have to take this medicine. No, right? Take responsibility, sane and normal. but also throw yourself more into helping others, right? I'm telling you, it's a personal experience. I can claim that, right? The thing I was looking for came and found me. All right. I hope that makes sense in context.
Anyone else have some questions they want to put in the chat? Questions?
Oh.
Any newcomers here want to get started, get abstinent?
I'm Padraig. How are you doing?
Good, thank you.
Thanks. I have a question there for you. I'm in the Nest Fellowship, and sometimes I have huge slips along the way. But sometimes my sponsor can judge me fairly bad. He doesn't have any kind of sympathy. He's like, he judges me right away, I had that happen to me there recently, and he said that's the way he got sober, that he's showing tough love, like, and all that. And
Can I ask you a question?
yeah,
You said you had a couple of slips.
yes,
Did you do the program prior to
yeah,
complete the 12 steps?
yes, I did.
And then you slipped?
Yes,
Okay. All right. I would question, you felt like you had a spiritual experience, really? You
I
saw
did. Yeah, but I suppose I did use, but I did have my father lost. I lost my father, and I kind of got caught up in that. And
I'll
used
tell you what why I'm asking this is a lot of people say I relapsed, and when I ask them, okay, where are you in the steps? Oh, I haven't started the steps. They didn't relapse. They just didn't do the steps. It's a human language tries to keep us looking as good as possible. When I say, hey, you know what? I put on some weight, my clothes don't fit. My clothes didn't change. I got larger. Does that make sense? People will say I relapsed, but the reality is they didn't actually do the steps. If you do the steps, right, you should have protection against a possible slip.
Yeah, I was just asking about people. Sometimes people can be tough, like, and I said that my sponsor was tough with me when I came around, and they said, "What, you're not doing right," and all
Okay,
this.
were you sponsoring people?
Yes,
Okay, were you actively sponsoring them? Were you keeping engaged?
yeah, I was. Yeah, I just rested up on my laurels.
Oh, okay,
I
fine,
did.
right. Yeah, page 85, right? It's easy to let up.
Yeah,
Okay, well, welcome back.
thank you.
And I'm going to throw this at you, and certainly use Joseph O for help. He's a wellspring. What are you going to do different this time? How are you going to learn from that? Progress, not perfection. What are you going to do better this time around? Just love, no tough love, but honesty, right? Honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness, like our big book says. What's going to be different?
I think she's asking you, Paul.
Yeah, I'm just thinking that I deserve I deserve sobriety. There's a part of me that feel like I didn't deserve sobriety. I need to focus on. I deserve sobriety. I'm worthy of recovery, and I'm willing to take the actions of that. And to say that I'm worthy of recovery. And so one of my principles is like I'm not worthy of recovery. That I am worthy of recovery now, though. I'm on this side of it.
Well,
Yeah,
yes, you are. And if I'm gonna read between the lines there, sorry, Joseph, you'll go right after me.
Go.
What I'm hearing is I'm worthy of recovery means I'm worthy because God or higher power, whatever you believe in, made you that way. This time around, you're gonna let God in more. That's what I heard, behind the
Yeah,
music there. That's what I heard is you're gonna let God in. You're gonna believe that He cares about your recovery. Hopefully in action, that means you're going to pray and meditate like your steps 10, 11, and your steps 10, 11 tell you to do, right? Prayer,
yes,
meditation, pausing, right? Because if you're worthy, that means God thinks you're worthy. If God thinks you're worthy, that means you believe in God. If you believe in God, you just have to let Him in and get out of the way, right? That's what I'm hearing. What do you think of that?
yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, I've been doing that since I got sober this time. Yes, letting God in. Yes, and
You're an
calling on God.
intelligent agent, spearheads of God, everlasting creation. Don't you forget that, okay?
Thank
God
you.
don't make no junk.
Thank you.
So, Patrick, sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name, but what I would do, I mean, this isn't advice, this is an experience. When I'm struggling in any capacity, if I'm feeling depressed, or that the world's not serving me properly, or How come nobody remembered my birthday? Blah, blah, blah. Pour me another drink. I ask myself, what actions have I taken, right, to get out of that position? I list. I went to a meeting. I called my sponsor. I called Karen. I spoke at this meeting. I adhered to my commitments. Blah, blah, blah. If I can't, also, one helpful thing, these gratitude lists that find themselves in the chats all the time, right? You've seen them?
Yes.
Yeah, completely useless, right? Gratitude is a feeling only I know about. It's like peeing in my pants, right? It's a warm feeling only I know about. Appreciation is where I take that gratitude list and it manifests in reality. I am grateful that my mother is still alive. Appreciation is taking her out to lunch. Do you know what I'm saying? The gratitude just focuses on me. Oh, I'm grateful I have a house. I'm grateful this. Well, grateful I have a house. Do I pay my rent on time? Do I thank my landlord? Today's the Sabbath, right? So I'm going to bring my landlord flowers. I don't owe him money today, right? But I just, you know what I'm saying? I can point to those things and it makes my feeling, I'm more impervious. It's like a vaccination, even though that has a bad reputation in this day and age, right? So I don't like to say vaccination. But what it says on page 89 is it says practical experience shows that nothing will so much ensure immunity from drinking as intensive work with other alcoholics. What we're searching for is immunity from drinking. The reason I didn't drink today isn't because I don't have money or time or anything like that. It's because I don't need a drink. I'm not afraid of it. I'm immune because I showed up at this meeting. I'm immune because I'm talking to you. I'm immune because I'm going to go give flowers to my landlord. I'm immune, blah, blah, blah. You know what I'm saying? Ask yourself,
Yes,
where are your actions on that? It will serve you well to go to the local shop, buy a cake, give it to your neighbor for no good reason. Right? Now you're saying, Joseph, that's crazy talk, right? But I'm telling you, if you do stuff like that often enough, you won't feel like drinking.
Thank you, Joseph. Thank you for that. And Karen.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
It's true.
Anyone
Like
else?
from a religious
Sorry, go ahead.
perspective, I happen to be a rabbi, right? So I'm just going to tell you a Jewish thing, right? The creator of the universe is always giving. He has no needs, right? God, okay? I'm not going to get heavy-handed with it. The more I give, the more I emulate him. The more I become godlike in whatever capacity, right? After this, I'll tell you, I'm gonna send Karen a thank you message. Thank you for letting me speak, right? The more I'm a giver, right? The more I'm acting like God. He'll come and protect me. The more I'm a taker, right? And I say like, oh, what did you think of what I said? Wasn't I great? Da, 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 you know, right? The more I'm a taker, the more I'm setting myself up for a drink because I'm reducing myself to being just human. I'm disconnecting from the power. You guys are all sitting in apartments, right, or whatever. You have a lot of appliances there, right? I see a lamp, a microwave, whatever, okay, right? How well do they work if you separate from the grid? Not at all. It's the same thing with our human assets, right? My intelligence, my charisma, my big book knowledge. If I separate from the grid, it won't work at all. But when I connect to God, right, then the lights turn on, if that makes sense. It's my experience.
Yeah, I love what you said, by the way, there and about gratitude lists. Because there, you could write gratitude lists and not be grateful. This is really heresy. You could be, a religious, observant woman like me and pray several times a day and not be connected to your higher power. How crazy is that?
Right.
You could pray and just not be there, not be
They do
connected,
serve a
not really
purpose.
letting go.
They do serve a purpose. If what I tell my sponsor, like, because okay, first of all, let's just call a spade, okay? When somebody just puts a gratitude list into the chat, I ask them, who told you to do that? Your sponsor? I want their number. No, I thought of it. Why are you trusting your brain again? What are you doing? Take that gratitude list and turn it into appreciation list. If you're really grateful you have a car, you're really grateful you have 30 days sober, you're really grateful you have $100 in your bank account, buy that niece that you've been ignoring a $10 gift. Put it into action. Because if it's just about me being grateful, right? I am separated from, because that'll come and it'll go. But the more I use it to manifest as an appreciation and put good into the world, those are things I can point to say I invested in my recovery. It's easy to let up on our laurels, like you quoted page 85, right? this is what it actually says on page 85, right? It says, and people forget this. They misinterpret it. This is why it's important to go to a big book study. Shout out big book study. It is easy to let up on the spiritual program of action, right? Action, not gratitudeless, of action, and rest on our laurels. We are headed for trouble if we do, for alcohol is a subtle foe. This is the fourth classification, alcohol. Cunning, baffling, powerful, subtle. We are not cured of alcoholism. What we really have is a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. That means action. Joseph, what did you do today to maintain your spiritual condition? Not what is my spiritual condition, because some days I'm in a funk, right? But what did I do to maintain my spiritual condition? I came to this meeting, right? I interacted with Karen. I'm following up with the questionnaires, right? Those are the things I did to maintain my spiritual condition. Does that make sense? It's if I can start listing out those things. If you go to the gym and you see the weights and you head for the juice bar and don't do anything, you don't get buff. It's not enough to talk about working out. It's not enough to like go to the gym, right? We can go to meetings all the time. There are some, I'll send you to 90 meetings that will make you more likely to drink, right? Because they're so bananas what goes on there. Everybody's complaining and this and that, right? I want to drink, right? If you're going to meetings, right, where people are sharing solution, what did I do in my life, book studies, whatever it is, step studies. It's not about going to meetings. That's group therapy. And that's why, unfortunately, recovery rate has gone down, because people believe that like, oh, I'm just going to go to a meeting, right? And I'm going to dump just like everybody else and I'm going to feel better. No, it doesn't work.
Okay, Joseph, time flies when we're having fun. Thank you for sharing.
Pleasure.
This is beautiful. Thank you for everyone who asked questions, all of those who joined the space and gave their incredible energy. Keep spreading your light. I'm going to ask Joseph O to pray us out, and we invite you every week here at 8 a.m. GMT plus 2. That's 8 a.m. GMT plus 2 to join us or listen to our recording at Reco12.com. Joseph, please pray us out.
Sure. Okay. I'm going to say the third step prayer, and you guys can say amen. It's on page 63 in our big book, if you don't know it. Okay. After a moment of silence for the alcoholic and addict inside and outside of these rooms who continues to suffer, please join me in the third step prayer, which reads, God, I offer myself to thee, to build with me and to do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help, thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. May I do thy will always. Amen.
Thank you. Have a beautiful day, everyone.